Now let's talk about Bangladesh. It is feeling the heat from New Delhi. India has imposed new trade restrictions on Dhaka. They target a range of imports from Bangladesh, including garments, which is the country's biggest export. And India has now placed curbs on them. 4 key border checkpoints in northeast India have been closed to Dhaka. Why? Because Dhaka has been doing the same to some Indian goods. Also, the interim ruler, Mohammad Yunus's growing ties with China have not helped. He recently called northeastern India landlocked. He invited China to access Indian territory through Bangladesh, and that statement, along with a string of Chinese investments, has raised alarms in Delhi. So now India is sending a clear message. Trade ties come with boundaries, and Dhaka may have just crossed one. Our next report has more.
Some statements carry a cost. Mohammad Yunus is now paying the price.
7 states of India, eastern part of India, called Seven Sisters, they are landlocked country, landlocked region of India. They have no way to reach out to the ocean. We are the only guardian of the ocean for all this region. So this opens up a huge possibility. So this could be an extension of the Chinese economy.
Yunus made that statement in March during his visit to China. He urged China to use Bangladesh as a gateway, as an access point to India's northeast. This statement didn't go unnoticed in New Delhi. This weekend, India took action. The government announced a series of trade restrictions. Bangladeshi exports will now face curbs. They won't have access to all the land ports. A range of imports have been impacted by this order. From ready-made garments, that's the largest export of Bangladesh and a vital source of dollar inflows, to plastic items and wooden furniture. Even carbonated drinks, bakery, confectionery, cotton yarn and dyes. Its exporters will now lose access to 4 key land routes: Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya and Mizoram, all located in India's northeast. These gateways are now closed to Bangladesh. New Delhi isn't just closing its doors, it's matching Bangladesh measure for measure. Dhaka had earlier restricted Indian yarn shipments. They allowed imports only through sea routes. Now India has responded. Several imports from Bangladesh face the same restrictions now. They can only use the seaport entry. This follows Dhaka's moves to tighten the scrutiny of Indian imports. Reports say Indian trucks face more checks and aggressive inspection in Bangladesh. So, in a way, India is deploying the strategy of reciprocity, a tit-for-tat move triggered by Dhaka's own restrictions. These curbs can hurt the economy of Bangladesh. It's already under strain. Dhaka needs more foreign exchange. Its books are under pressure. India's curbs could impact $770 million worth of exports. That's nearly 42% of Bangladesh's shipments by land to India. Legitimate reason to be concerned. Under Yunus, China has made deeper inroads in Bangladesh. In March, the chief advisor visited Beijing and signed multiple deals. This includes at least 8 MOUs. New investments were announced. This included a Chinese economic zone in Chittagong and the modernization of the Mongla port, the second largest seaport of Bangladesh. China is also showing new interest in the Teesta River project. Earlier, New Delhi was assured exclusivity. Now Beijing is back at the table. Yunus also walked away with significant financial commitments. China committed around $2 billion in loans, grants and investments. The message for New Delhi was loud and clear. Yunus is pitting China against India. And now that New Delhi has responded, Bangladesh wants to have a dialogue with India. An advisor of Yunus has spoken. He says Dhaka wants to resolve trade issues with New Delhi. But the tone from New Delhi has shifted. This is no longer just about trucks or tariffs. India is drawing a red line. Trade and provocations cannot go together. Yunus may call northeastern India landlocked, But it's New Delhi that has now locked him out.
At First Post, we are choosing to hold on to accuracy. That means we won't always be first. We may not get you your breaking alert. But what you will get is what we owe you. And that is the truth. Verified, checked, and cross-checked. We rely on sources and verified ones. After all, that's what separates a journalist from a loudspeaker. But sometimes even we miss a beat. And when we do, we will tell you. Like yesterday, we ran visuals from a registered news agency. That visual turned out to be fake. So we are taking accountability. And from now on, we will cite the source of every visual, every picture, every video that you see on First Post will have a source mentioned. That is our commitment to you. We will wait, we will verify, we will ask again, and only then will we tell you. No noise, no panic, just the facts. Because right now, that is what the country needs most.
When I first visited the US as a Prime Minister, India was the 10th largest economy in the world. 10th. Today, India is the 5th largest economy.
India will have probably the greatest growth rate, the fastest growth rate economically.
Indian economy to be at anywhere between 35 and 45 trillion by 2047.
According to the IMF, an increase in Indian domestic investment is key. It also said that growth is set to continue in the years ahead.
Make significant investments in India. It is something that we intend to do.
2047 जब आजादी के 100 साल होंगे, आजादी के दीवानों के सारे सपने पूरे करने का जिम्मा उठा करके चलना होगा.
Hi everybody, I have a question for you. Do you believe India can become a superpower? Do you believe that we could beat China to become the manufacturing powerhouse of the world? If yes, then you would know that in the past 10 years, the government of India has taken some serious steps to build the nation that we all aspire to live in. A nation that stands as the epitome of growth, power and development. A nation that can forget its horrific past of being oppressed and poor and look at itself as a dominating force in the world economy. This is the reason why we saw the historic moment when the Prime Minister of India delivered a speech to the US Congress. Now, considering the pace at which we are growing, considering the population that we have, the entire world looks at India as the next rising superpower after China. Because if you look at both our nations' history, it is very, very similar. China was a poor country just like India. And just like India, China was facing the pain of being a socialist country.
It is 1978. The Chinese economy has barely functioned in decades. Tens of millions of people have died. People on the countryside are starving.
But this is where in 1978, something crazy happened when China liberalized its economy.
In 1978, a few years after Mao's death, Deng began methodically to reinvigorate China's once prosperous economy. Deng Xiaoping turned the page.
Under his plan, China would retain its socialist political ideology, but combine it with market economy reforms.
And if you look at this graph, both our GDPs, we had a similar trajectory. But somehow, after the 1980s, China witnessed a hockey stick growth and its GDP skyrocketed to go so far ahead that today, the Chinese economy is almost 5 times as that of the Indian economy. But as we all know, after being 13 years late, all thanks to Dr. Manmohan Singh, India finally got liberalized in 1991, just like China did in 1978.
India is on the move again. We shall make the future happen.
In July 1991, India kicked off a series of reforms to unleash its economy from the stifling rigidity of the socialist era.
We have to harness all our latent resources for a second industrial revolution.
Our markets were opened to the world with ease of doing business being made paramount not just for foreign companies but also Indian entrepreneurs.
We got government off the backs of India's entrepreneurs. We introduced more competition. We created record number of jobs. We were able to control inflation, and the economy was growing at a rate of 7% per annum.
India's permit Raj was ended.
And if you see the Chinese economy, they witnessed a hockey stick growth exactly 30 years after liberalization, which is from 2008 to 2023. And now in 2021, we completed our 30 years since liberalization. So now the world expects India to accelerate and become the second largest economy in the world in the next 20 years. This is the reason why foreign direct investment in India is flooding in, foreign investors are pouring in cash, and venture capital firms are burning billions of dollars just to bet on India.
India will have probably the greatest growth rate, the fastest growth rate economically.
Today, we're announcing that we're going to invest an incremental $1 billion in digitizing small and medium businesses.
The strength of India today in terms of economic growth and innovation is very exciting.
Make significant investments in India. It is something that we intend to do.
India is eyeing $100 billion in annual foreign direct investment.
So this is fantastic, right? This is great news. Well, not really, because I have a report from the Bloom Ventures called the Indus Valley Report. And this report tells us about 3 major challenges that India needs to overcome if we want to become an economic superpower. And if we do not overcome these challenges, India will not become an economic superpower. I repeat, India will not become an economic superpower. So the question is, what does this Indus Valley report tell us about India? What are these 3 economic challenges that we need to tackle? And is the government of India really solving for these challenges? And if you find value in this case study, please share this case study with as many people as possible. But before we move on, I want to introduce you to my go-to business guide and a very close friend, Rajiv Talreja. You know guys, Think School is now transitioning from a scrappy startup to a full-fledged organization. And I have been struggling to build systems and hire the right candidates. And now I'm struggling to balance the growth of my company and the growth of my employees. And you know, every time I have a question, the first person I call is Rajiv sir. And if you're also a business owner who's stuck in the trap of self-employment, where you are doing sales, operation, accounts, and all the firefighting by yourself, then you are making a big mistake. Because the business owner has to play the role of management and not of a super employee. So if you want to master the art of building a great system, Rajiv himself is conducting something called the Business Pace Program. This is a 3-day live online course where Rajiv will teach you step by step how to build an actionable system to create a profitable and scalable growth model, how to hire the right people, how to develop the skills of your team, what is the secret of employee retention, how to identify and fire the wrong people, and most importantly, he will also teach you how to design your systems for scale in all departments of your business. And you have my personal guarantee that this course is an absolute goldmine. So if you want to turn your business into a sustainable, scalable venture, then use the link in the description and check out Rajiv's Business Pace Program. Chalo, let's start from the basics. Look at this chart. This chart is the hallmark of the great Indian dream. And this chart says that every time there has been a crisis, India has made an epic comeback. For example, after the 2008 crisis, we slumped to a 3.1% growth. But we made a comeback to hit 8.5% growth. Then we saw a minus 5.8% slump in COVID, but then we rose to 9.1%, and even today we continue to be the fastest growing economy in the world with a 6% GDP growth. And during the same time, China stands at 4.7% and the US stands at 1.4%. And if you look at the global average, it is just 2.7%. So this looks amazing, right? Well, guess what guys? This graph is an illusion because this graph is hiding a very critical problem in plain sight. You don't believe me? Look at this picture. While we rank number 5 in terms of GDP, we rank 140th in terms of per capita GDP. Yes, 140th. And we are so far behind that Mexico has 6 times per capita GDP as that of India. China has almost 5 times. Indonesia has almost 2 times, and even Bangladesh is $9 ahead of us. So the question is, how is there such a stark difference? Well, the answer to it lies in this graph. This graph gives us a GDP decomposition of India, and this graph tells us that 60% of our GDP is coming from private consumption. So when families buy groceries and cars and pay for education or spend money on entertainment, it contributes to the private consumption component of the GDP. Similarly, 11% is coming from government spending. So when the government pays for salaries to public servants or purchases military equipment, this counts as government spending. But you know what? There is one big problem, and this problem is something called the gross fixed capital formation. While for China it is 43%, for India it is just 29%. And this, ladies and gentlemen, points towards the first critical problem of the Indian economy. So the question is, what the hell is this gross fixed capital formation, and why is it so low for India? Well, gross fixed capital formation, or GFCF, refers to the net investment in physical assets that are used in the production process for more than 1 year. For example, let's say there is a company named Indian Textiles Limited, and this company specializes in producing cotton fabrics. This company operates with 20 looms, with each loom producing 100 meters of fabric per day. So the daily output is 2000 meters. Now let's say Indian Textiles Limited decides to invest in a new high-speed loom that costs 10 lakh rupees. And this new loom is more efficient and can produce 200 meters of fabric per day. So before the loom came in, there were 20 looms producing 2000 meters of fabric. But now, after this addition, they will together produce 2000 plus 200, which is 2200 meters per day. So there is a 10% increase in the production capacity of the mill. So this cost of 10 lakh rupees that the company spent in getting this loom would count as fixed capital. And when you add this capital from thousands of companies and the government projects all across the country, it gives you India's gross fixed capital formation. And in the context of the government, this capital formation is when the government spends money to build bridges, highways, and optical fiber cables. And you know what, guys? This gross fixed capital formation gives the country 3 amazing superpowers. Firstly, it increases production and lowers the production cost, so the economy sees an immediate increase in the availability of domestically produced products. Number 2, when domestically produced products are available, they will either contribute to exports or they will reduce imports. And lastly, because of one industry increasing its production, it also encourages the related industries to grow. In this case, the addition of one loom has a ripple effect on dyeing, finishing, and apparel manufacturing industries. All of this creates jobs, which eventually increases both per capita GDP and per capita income. This is the reason why gross fixed capital formation is absolutely important, not just for India, but for every other country. If this is very, very clear to you, let's come back to this graph. India's gross fixed capital formation is just 29%, and for China, it is 43%. And I don't know if you see this, but this is a disastrous difference. And the sad fact is that this has been the case for India for 20 long years. If you look at this graph, India has consistently underinvested in capital formation. So from 2001 to 2023, we have never invested beyond 35% of our GDP in capital formation. Whereas if you look at China, despite the Chinese economy being almost 5 times bigger than India, capital formation is more than 40% of their GDP since 2003. So do you imagine this? 40% of $18 trillion is $7.2 trillion, and our entire GDP is just $3.5 trillion. So ladies and gentlemen, China is so far ahead that China is investing more than 2 times of our entire $3.5 trillion GDP. And we are investing barely $1 trillion, which is 1/7 as that of China. This is the first critical challenge for the Indian economy, which is the lack of gross fixed capital formation. But this begs the question, if this is so obvious to us, then why on earth are we not investing enough into our gross fixed capital formation? Well, this is where the second critical problem of the Indian economy comes in, which is corporate and MSME debt. Look at this graph. From 1991 to 2020, India's domestic credit to the private sector has grown from 23.8% to just 54.7%. Whereas if you look at China, Korea and Vietnam, they stand at 182%, 164% and 115%. Now, just to show you how big this difference is, the Chinese private sector has a debt of 182% of its $18 trillion GDP, which is $32.76 trillion, and India stands at just 54%. So 54% of 3 trillion is just $1.62 trillion. This means the Chinese private companies have 20 times more capital in debt than India. And this is the reason why, while the Chinese companies are pouring in cash into capital formation, we are struggling. So this again begs the question, why are we so far behind in capital formation? Well, the first problem is the loan crisis that we discussed in our white paper and banking crisis episode. And if you haven't watched it already, please do it, because that episode will show you why our banks are bleeding. But long story short, our banks lent money to the wrong people and wrong companies, because of which they did not pay the loan back. As a result, our bank suffered so much that our gross non-performing assets or bad loans, it shot up from 5% to 15% from 2015 to 2018. This is the reason why our banks had to suddenly limit their lending and they got scrutinized by the RBI, and we were almost on the verge of a banking crisis. So at the end of the day, what happened? Today, even good companies are not able to borrow money. By the way, this is the reason why the government of India said to the corporates that, listen guys, we can't give you loans, but instead we can reduce the corporate taxes for you.
India has announced sweeping tax cuts in a bid to kickstart its economy.
New provision has been inserted in the Income Tax Act, which allows any domestic company an option to pay income tax at the rate of 22%.
So if you remember, during the farmers' protest, the farmers said when the corporate tax rate was reduced in 2019 and the government readily sacrificed 1.5 lakh crores, why can't they give 1.5 lakh crores to the farmers as MSP? Well, the reason why the government cut taxes is not to win votes, but to give our corporates more scope to invest in machine and infrastructure. And logically, if you see, if they wanted to win elections in 2019, they would have cut corporate taxes in 2018 because the elections were held in April 2019. And if you see the timeline, these corporate tax cuts happened in September 2019. So the moral of the story is that the government did not give out corporate tax cuts to please the corporates or to win votes. They did so because it was absolutely critical for our economy. And secondly, we learned that lack of corporate debt is preventing us from investing in capital formation. The second problem for our lack of capital formation is the lack of MSME loans. And again, we've made a very detailed video on it, so please check it out from the I button. Meanwhile, if you know how MSMEs face a debt crisis, please skip to this timestamp. If you don't, here's a very simple explanation of the same. Let's say Ravi runs a small business selling finished textiles to retailers. He has a total of 1 lakh rupees in his bank account. Now, Ravi needs to buy raw materials worth 1 lakh rupees every month to keep his textile manufacturing unit running. And when he buys these raw materials, he has to pay his suppliers in cash. So he needs to have this amount of 1 lakh rupees available at the start of each month. And after his goods are produced, Ravi sells his finished textiles to retailers for a total of 1.5 lakh rupees. So this means he makes a profit of 50,000 rupees each month, right? But you know what, guys? The catch over here is that these retailers don't pay Ravi immediately. Why? Because they operate on credit. So they will pay Ravi only after 60 days of receiving the goods. So do you see, even though Ravi is making a profit on paper, at the end of the month, he is left with zero cash in hand. In fact, a negative of 1 lakh rupees because he invested 1 lakh rupees into production. But again, to continue his business, Ravi needs to infuse another 1 lakh rupees into his business so that he can buy raw materials from his suppliers and then sell it to his customers. So at the end of first month, even though Ravi has made a profit of 50,000 rupees on paper, he has a cash flow deficit of 1 lakh rupees. So now if Ravi does not have 1 lakh rupees, he won't be able to buy raw materials and he won't be able to cater to his next order. And this is what is the problem with the Indian MSMEs, where they purchase in cash but they sell on credit. So at this point, if Ravi could get a loan of 1 lakh rupees, he could use it to bridge this cash flow gap, right? And you know what, guys? This entire MSME sector, which employs people like Ravi, it is so important for India that they contribute more than 29% of the Indian GDP and are responsible for 50% of India's total exports. But you know what, guys? Unfortunately, people like Ravi do not get loans from banks at all. And even if they do, they get it at 15, 30 and sometimes 50% interest, which makes it very difficult for them to repay. And why are these loans so costly? Well, firstly, these MSMEs usually deal in cash, so they do not have a credit history. Secondly, if the banks have to process a 50,000 rupee loan, then 5 to 10,000 rupees just go into processing of documents and physical verification. So if 10% of their loan amount is only going into processing, then obviously the interest on loans will range between 30 to 50%, right? And lastly, these loans are usually a matter of urgency, and because the banks take a lot of time to process them, the purpose of the loan itself is defeated. This is such a big problem that India has a $530 billion credit gap, as in $530 billion worth of loans are needed but are not received by the MSMEs of India. This is the reason why India is building something called the Open Credit Enablement Network. I'll attach a detailed Think School case study in the description so that you can understand OCEN better. So this is the second reason why the private sector in India is not able to borrow, which is the credit gap of the MSMEs. And the last reason why Indian banks are not able to lend is because India by default does not have enough capital. And why is that? Because again, if you look at this chart, only 1.5% of the total Indian population pays taxes in India. And only 0.3% of Indians contribute to 80% of India's tax collected. This means the affluent class in India is so small that we are effectively smaller than the population of Australia. And the rest of India is so poor that they can be compared to the poorest African countries in the world. So long story short, the government doesn't have money and people don't have enough money to spend. This is the reason why even if companies want to produce more products, they are not able to increase production because the demand itself is too less. And because the demand is too less, they are not able to invest in increasing their capacity. So again, this results into less capital formation. And this gives rise to the third hurdle of the Indian economy, which is government debt. In simple words, since very less people pay taxes, the government doesn't get enough money to invest in infrastructure. And since the government doesn't have enough money to invest, what does the government do? The government takes up debt. And if you see this graph, our government debt as a percentage of GDP is well above Mexico and China, and it is almost inching close to Brazil. And if you're a Think School student, you already know what happens when government debt increases. When government takes up too much debt, a lot of money goes into just interest payments. And then what happens? We suffer because the government has less money to invest in future projects like bridges and roads. So again, what happens? Because the government is not able to build bridges and roads, the capital formation is again less. So if you see, this is what completes our loop of capital formation. So these are the three hurdles that are stopping the Indian economy from achieving a hockey stick growth, which are less gross fixed capital formation, lack of debt to corporates and MSMEs, and lack of disposable income, which forces the government to take up debt due to less taxes. So the last question over here is, what is the solution to these problems and what is the government doing to solve these problems? Well, the first solution is to increase the ease of doing business in India. In simple words, if an American company wants to invest 1,000 crores today, and if they are made to wait 1 year because of lack of land approvals and hundreds of other government approvals, they won't be able to invest 1,000 crores and they'll move to another country like Indonesia or Vietnam. And when you look at China did not have this problem because the Chinese government owned all of the lands. So they can approve a land for Apple tomorrow. And we need to achieve this because only if this 1,000 crores come in, we can increase production, people will get jobs, government will get taxes, and all three problems that I mentioned can be solved. This is the reason why the government of India is trying very hard to bring a land banking system in India just like Gujarat. And if you want to understand the land banking system, we made a video on this and I'll attach the link in the study materials. The second solution to this problem is to build a digital system to enable loans for MSMEs. And for this, the government has the Open Credit Enablement Network, the link to which again I'll attach in the description. And lastly, the RBI needs to give more free hand for the banks so that the corporate companies can borrow more. But like we saw in our banking crisis episode, this has to be done in such a sharp manner that it should not let our banks fail. So either we need to have a lot of money with foreign capital or we can lend our money judiciously. Otherwise, there is no solution. This is how, if India gets over these hurdles, we will become an economic superpower. If not, just like we lingered in our past of our Sone Ki Chidiya story, we will again linger over our past about how we missed the train to become the most dominating force in the world. And I just hope you learned something valuable from this case study. That's all from my side for today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button in order to make YouTube Baba happy. And for more such insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Our lead story tonight is China. It's a sinking ship. Investors are leaving. Chinese investors are leaving. And Xi Jinping has no one but himself to blame for this. We'll bring you the numbers. In the US, Nikki Haley is out of the Republican race. So it will be Donald Trump against Joe Biden. A 2020 rematch. We'll look at how the odds are stacked. On the moon, Russia and China have a plan. They want to set up a nuclear power plant. This is not from a Hollywood movie. We have the details. Also in the news, does America have the political will to ban TikTok? We ask because they're introducing yet another bill to do it. What caused the tech outage in Meta and why is the White House investigating it? Why is Haiti's Prime Minister trapped out of his own country? What's India's new underwater metro? Why the Turkish economy is down in the dumps despite, or should I say because of President Erdogan's intervention? What do we know about the insurgency in Mozambique that has displaced 100,000 people, and why the Arctic will have no ice in a decade, and how does it affect your life? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The Indian Navy commissions its new base in the Lakshadweep Islands. INS Jatayu at Minicoy is India's second naval base in the Lakshadweep. It will help enhance New Delhi's reach in the strategically important Indian Ocean region. Indian benchmark indices hit record high. The Sensex ends above the 74,000 mark for the first time. Stocks in banking, IT and consumer durables lead the rally. The Nifty also hits a lifetime high of 22,474. No such fortune for Egypt, though. The crisis-hit country devalues its currency. The Egyptian pound plunges to a record low. Cairo will now let its currency trade freely, a key demand of the International Monetary Fund. Egypt has been in talks with the IMF to get more aid. Tensions escalate in the South China Sea. Philippine President Marcos calls China's actions alarming. On Tuesday, Philippine and Chinese vessels collided in the disputed waters. It's the latest confrontation between the two countries. China claims almost the entire waterway. France and Moldova to sign defense deal on Thursday. It comes amid rising tensions between Moldova and pro-Russian separatists. These separatists are from Transnistria, Moldova's breakaway region. Last week, they asked Moscow for protection. And Somalia gains full membership of the East African Community, becoming its 8th member. In 2012, it had applied to join the bloc. The EAC is one of the fastest growing regional economic groups in the world. How do you know that a ship is sinking? Well, when it starts taking water, yes, but also when the crew jumps overboard. And that's China in a nutshell for you. In the last few decades, it was a shiny new cruise liner. Everyone wanted a place on board. But now this vessel is sinking, so the race is on to abandon the ship. Look at the latest headline from Beijing. Chinese investors rush abroad. Why? Because they're losing confidence in the domestic market. We have numbers too. I'm sorry. Imagine you're a big investor in China, maybe a mutual fund or bank or insurance company. You can't randomly buy assets abroad. There is a channel that you must use. It's called the QDII, the Qualified Domestic Institutional Investor Program, QDII. All offshore investments are channeled through this. And the sales of these funds are up. By how much? 50% compared to last year. At the same time, investments in Chinese mutual funds are down by almost 35%. Let me simplify that for you. There's a 50% rise in Chinese money going abroad. There's also a 35% drop in money going into Chinese equity markets. The question is why? Because Chinese assets are not giving returns. Look at their currency, yuan. Last year, $1 was equal to 6.9 yuan. Now it's 7.2 yuan. That's almost 4% down in 1 year. Chinese stocks are a similar story, almost 2.6% down in 6 months. And finally, you have Chinese treasury bonds. The 30-year ones are giving record low returns, just 2.4%. Compare that to US treasury bonds. They're giving almost 4.3% returns. So put yourself in the shoes of a Chinese investor. Would you be happy with these numbers, with these returns? Chances are no. Listen to one such investor based in Shanghai, I'm quoting, "We feel a pressing need from our wealthy clients to diversify asset allocation. After 20 years of high growth and high returns, the Chinese economy faces a slowdown in the foreseeable future." This is the sentiment. This is the trend. What is China doing about it? They do have some controls here because the foreign investment scheme has a cap. There is a limit on how much money can be parked abroad. Right now, it's $166 billion, but investors are quite close to hitting that cap. So it's a very hot market right now. On one hand, a race to invest abroad. On the other, China's investment quotas. It's like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, a scary prospect. The root cause here is China's economy. It's a shadow of its former self. The Chinese economy opened up back in 1978. Since then, their average GDP growth was 9%. In some years, it hit 13%. But look at the latest numbers. China grew by just 5.3% in 2023. For this year, the projection is again 5%. Even that is being questioned by experts. So much so that Chinese officials are having to defend it.
This goal aligns with the annual requirements of the 14th five-year plan and is fundamentally matched with the potential for economic growth, representing a positive and achievable target with concerted effort.
He says it's achievable. So did China's Prime Minister this week, in fact. He promised to transform China's economy. But investors are not convinced. We showed you how Chinese investors are taking money out. So can you imagine what foreign investors are doing? They're staying away. Last year, China's foreign investments hit a 30-year low. They got just $33 billion in FDI. Compare that to other Asian economies. India got $33 billion in just 6 months. Vietnam attracted almost $37 billion. So the investors have made their choice. They clearly think that China is not the best bet. What can Xi Jinping do about it? Many would say he is the problem. Xi inherited a robust Chinese economy. He was elected president in 2013. Back then, China was growing at almost 8%. But look at his decisions since then. He picked fights with neighbors. He tried to expand into the South China Sea, splurged on the Belt and Road project, took on the United States, covered up a deadly pandemic, smothered Hong Kong's global appeal, and then implemented a disastrous zero-COVID policy. Add to that China's systemic problems, like an aging population, the lack of freedoms, and of course the one-party rule. It makes you wonder, is China's time up? Did Xi Jinping reveal his intentions too early? The economic data suggests, yes, he did. In the United States, it was Super Tuesday, a big day in the election calendar. 15 states and 1 U.S. territory vote on a single day. That's why it's called Super Tuesday. Now, Super Tuesday sets the tempo for the battle ahead. And it's claimed a victim today. That's Nikki Haley. She's out of the presidential race officially. Nikki Haley has suspended her campaign. Interestingly, she did not endorse Donald Trump when she did it. Instead, she asked him to earn her trust.
I have always been a conservative Republican. and always supported the Republican nominee. But on this question, as she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind." It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause badly needs more people.
Nikki Haley launched her campaign last year. It was right after Donald Trump. The first few months were a slump. She was polling in single digits. Then the first debate happened. She started gaining traction. She did well in these debates. She beat the likes of Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. Haley was a moderate candidate, no radical views, sticking to status quo. It appealed to plenty of Republicans, especially those who did not support Donald Trump. They rallied behind her. Then donors took notice. They backed her campaign. Basically, she was seen as an alternative to Donald Trump, but not by the voters. She kept losing in the primaries. 24 primaries have been held so far. Nikki Haley won just 2 of them. She lost even in her home state, South Carolina. Soon her luck with the donors too ran out. America has something called super PACs, political action committees. They get campaign funds. These super PACs left Haley's campaign, so she lost funding. There were doubts about how long she could continue. Today, she's put those doubts to rest. Nikki Haley is out, which leaves the Republicans with just Donald Trump. He's the only Republican candidate now, and that means he will go against Joe Biden.
Well, thank you very much. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. This is a big one. And they tell me, the pundits and otherwise, that there's never been one like this. There's never been anything so conclusive. This was an amazing night, an amazing day. It's been an incredible period of time in our country's history.
It's a 2020 rematch, Trump versus Biden. It may not be the choice that America wanted, but it's the choice that they're getting. For Trump, this is just the first hurdle he's crossed. He has no opponents. But does he have the money? Because elections are an expensive spectacle. And in the US, billions are spent on campaigning. If you can't raise the money, you're out. Now you may ask, why will Trump not have the money? The former president is, after all, a billionaire. He enjoys strong Republican support, so raising money should not be a problem for him. But it is, because Donald Trump faces 91 felony counts. He's been indicted in 4 cases. 2024 is not a good year for him. Trump was ordered to pay $355 million by a New York court. If you add interests, that's $454 million. Then there's an $83 million defamation case, plus the bills of his lawyers. So Trump is burning money, and he's doing it every day. By some accounts, he owes $500 million in just court penalties. That can't be good for anyone, no matter how rich. It's especially bad for a candidate in an election year. So Donald Trump needs funding, which explains why he met Elon Musk a few days ago. The meeting took place in Florida. It was over the weekend. We don't know the exact details, but all reports mention one thing. Trump wants Musk to fund his campaign. Will the Tesla CEO do it? It's not clear yet. Musk is one of the richest people in the world. His net worth is around $200 billion. So he does have the means to do it. Plus, Elon Musk does not like Joe Biden. He has spoken against the US president in the past. He says defeating Biden is a priority. But does that make him a Trump ally? Well, not yet. Neither Musk nor Trump have commented on this. But you never know with these two men. Surprises are their forte. Right now, Biden has a financial advantage. He is the incumbent. He's getting most of the funding. Biden raised $42 million in January. Reports suggest his re-election campaign has around $130 million in the bank. So he does have an advantage, at least for now. But if Musk joins the Trump campaign, he joins hands with Trump, it could more than level the playing field. Now brace yourself, because this next story sounds like a mad science project, something you would expect from a Bond villain. Russia and China want to install a nuclear plant on the moon. Who's saying this? The head of Russia's space agency. He's also given a timeline. He wants to install and deliver this plant by 2035. First, the obvious question, why? A nuclear plant on Earth is dangerous enough. Why do you need one on the moon? For energy. In 2021, Russia and China signed an agreement. They decided to build a lunar research station, basically a moon base. Russia and China wanted to build it. And these bases will need electricity to run. But options are few. The obvious one is solar energy. Fit some panels on the base and store the sun's energy. But there's a problem. The nights on the moon last up to 14 days. That's 14 days with no sunlight, which is why scientists are seeking other options. In this case, nuclear energy. That answers the why of this Bond project. Now let's look at the how. How do you build a nuclear plant on the moon? The plan is to deliver the reactor to the lunar surface. Russia says robots will then install it. Apparently, all the technical concerns have been addressed except one: how to cool the reactor. Nuclear plants require vast amounts of water. We're talking about billions of gallons per year. That's the kind of water they need. This water is used to cool the reactors. It must then be filtered and stored. Again, there's a problem. The moon doesn't have that much water. Researchers have found traces and molecules, but nowhere near billions of gallons of water. Until that problem is solved, a nuclear-powered moon colony is a pipe dream. But the idea itself is not really bad. In fact, it's actually been tried before, though the scale was much smaller. Let me take you back to 1969. The Apollo 12 mission landed 2 astronauts on the moon. They carried a nuclear generator with them. Solar panels were not reliable enough, so NASA settled on a nuclear generator. From all accounts, it worked pretty well. It gave enough power to conduct all the tests. So nuclear energy has been used on the moon before, not as a plant, but as a generator. And NASA is looking to expand it. They too have plans for a long-term lunar base to settle humans on the moon for 10 years. And what's their power source? The same as Russia, a nuclear reactor. In 2022, NASA gave 3 contracts to private companies. They were asked to design the lunar reactors. Last month, the first phase of that plan was wrapped up. NASA wants 2 things from the reactor. 1, it should weigh under 6 tons. And 2, it must produce 40 kilowatts, which is enough to power more than 30 households. Again, we don't know how NASA will cool it down. We also don't know how this reactor will be taken to the moon. But we do know one thing: space exploration is entering a nuclear age. The first space race was all about reaching somewhere, like the Earth's orbit, or the moon, or Mars. This new race is about staying there. And for that, you need more powerful energy sources. Nuclear power could be the answer. Just think about it. What if you want to explore beyond the solar system or set up a base on Mars? Then solar panels will not help you. But nuclear energy can. It can produce more power over longer periods of time. Of course, there are risks here too. What happens if your nuclear payload crashes on the moon? Like what happened to Russia last year? The spacecraft was called Luna 25. It was the first Russian lunar mission in 47 years, and it failed. The Luna 25 lost control and crashed on the moon. So we need to be mindful of these risks. Also, nuclear reactors could be a slippery slope. What if nuclear weapons are next? Recently, the US accused Russia of trying to place nukes in space. President Putin rejected those claims. But what if someone else actually does it? So nuclear energy is a double-edged sword. It could unlock the next chapter in space exploration. It could also trigger a nuclear space race. Now let's talk about America and TikTok. It's a love-hate relationship. Americans love TikTok. American politicians, not so much. They're trying to ban TikTok again. 19 lawmakers have introduced a bill. They're sending a message to ByteDance. ByteDance is the parent company of TikTok, and I have a quote. Break up with the Chinese Communist Party or lose access to your American users. This is from Mike Gallagher, a Republican lawmaker. Democrats also support this bill, so there is bipartisan backing. The bill has been introduced in the US Congress. What does it say? It's quite straightforward. This bill puts ByteDance on notice. If this bill is passed, the company will get 165 days. Within this time frame, 165 days, ByteDance must sell TikTok. The idea is to separate the two entities, ByteDance and TikTok. If TikTok wants to operate in the US, it will have to do so without ByteDance because ByteDance is a Chinese company. Its headquarters are in Beijing. So how does it operate in the United States? There's a different corporate entity which manages TikTok's business in the US. Its CEO is a man called Shu Chu. He is a citizen of Singapore. But this corporate structure does not change one simple fact. TikTok is a Chinese app controlled by a Chinese company funded or founded by Chinese entrepreneurs. Here's another fact. In 2021, a new investor came into ByteDance, and that is the Chinese government. The government of China, it acquired 1% in ByteDance. Again, that's the Chinese parent of TikTok. This acquisition also gave Beijing a seat on the board of ByteDance. Now, TikTok says this does not affect its overseas business in any way, but that's hard to buy. If the Communist Party sits in the boardroom of ByteDance, it is bound to make lawmakers in the US uncomfortable. So they have brought in this new bill. It gives ByteDance a simple choice. Sell off TikTok's US business or lose access to American users. If ByteDance fails to follow through, it won't be able to distribute the app. TikTok will be blocked from all app stores and internet platforms. So the threat of a ban is real. But what does the company say? It says this bill tramples on the rights of Americans. And the app commands a vast user base in the US, some 150 million people. The US is TikTok's biggest market by user base, 150 million users. Earlier, the biggest market was India. But India banned the app in 2020. Do you know how many people use TikTok in India then? More than 200 million. And these were the active users, meaning they opened the app every day. So it was a sizable number, 200 million, more than what the US has. But it did not stop India from banning TikTok. So the question is, will the US be next? Well, they've tried it before. The US has tried banning TikTok in the past. Since 2020, we've seen a series of false starts. Donald Trump was the first to try. Did not work. 2 years later, in 2022, Joe Biden signed a bill. He banned TikTok on all government devices. Now, this was a selective ban imposed only on US government employees using a government-issued device. TikTok was banned there. In plain numbers, this ban impacted nearly 4 million employees. And what was the reason given for this ban? Data security concerns. That's what the US cited. That's why the ban, data security concerns. Interestingly, the same Joe Biden joined TikTok last month. The US president is on the Chinese app. What for? Election campaigning. The national security concerns notwithstanding.
The administration still has concerns, security concerns about TikTok, even though the campaign has now joined it.
Again, I cannot speak, nor will I speak for the campaign. I can't do that or their decisions. Nothing's changed about the national security concerns.
That's the problem with the US. Its approach towards TikTok is confusing. The president cannot seem to make up his mind. Same with the lawmakers. They can't seem to decide what to do with TikTok. Last year, they tried a ban. They introduced a bill to block the app. TikTok lobbied hard. The bill was stalled and eventually dead. So will America succeed this time? Will it find the political will to beat TikTok? Guess we'll have to wait and see. Yesterday was a hard day for Meta. Its apps were down. They weren't working. I'm talking about Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. It was a global outage. It took place around 9 p.m. IST. If you missed it, chances are you were busy watching Vantage. But if your doom scrolling was affected, you do know this. This outage cost Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg $3 billion. So your problems can wait. But what caused this outage? And why is the White House now looking into it? Our next report gets you the answers.
Imagine this: no cat reels, relationship statuses stuck in It's Complicated, influencers in panic, and just one message flashing on your screens. Sorry, something went wrong. Try again. Some people turned to ancient texts, also known as books. Others had to engage in face-to-face conversations, without emojis and GIFs. Does that sound like a dystopian landscape? Well, that was the case for Meta yesterday. Its apps were down. I'm talking about Instagram, Facebook, and yes, even Threads. It was a global outage, so it wasn't just on your phone. It was happening across the globe. The problem began around 3:30 p.m. GMT, that's 9 p.m. India time. If you didn't notice it, maybe you were busy watching Vantage.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma.
The outage lasted for around 90 minutes. You couldn't log into Facebook. Instagram Reels were down, so doom scrolling was out of the window. Which is why people turned to X, formerly known as Twitter. The app had a field day. Elon Musk was obviously enjoying it. He put out a post. It said, "If you're reading this post, it's because our servers are working." Musk was clearly having fun, and so was the rest of social media. So it was all fun and games for everyone except Mark Zuckerberg. He's the Meta CEO, and reports suggest the outage hit him hard. He lost around $3 billion. So if you thought you were the hardest hit because you couldn't put up reels, think again. However, Zuckerberg is still maintaining his position as the fourth richest man, so I guess he'll survive. Which begs us to ask, what exactly was the problem? Meta called it a technical issue. Sounds like any other IT guy. Meta says they tried to resolve the issue as fast as possible. However, it wasn't just Meta that was having a bad day. Google too saw some outages. There were issues with some logins, minor ones compared to Meta, but overall, it wasn't a great day for big tech. The outages coincided with Super Tuesday. Millions of Americans were voting, which is why the White House couldn't ignore it. They waded into the issue, and this is what they had to say. We are aware of the incident, and at this time, we are not aware of any specific election nexus or any specific malicious cyber activity. These outages are not new. In 2021, Meta apps faced a similar worldwide outage. That was for longer. Apps like Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp were down. So this isn't its first rodeo. Chances are it won't be the last either. Just goes to show, no matter how advanced technology gets, we are still, at times, left at the mercy of the internet gods.
Now let's turn our attention to Haiti. The Caribbean nation is being overrun. Armed gangs are besieging the capital, Port-au-Prince. The police force is on the back foot. Thousands of residents are fleeing the violence. But where is the government? The Prime Minister is trapped outside the country. His name is Ariel Henry. He tried to land in Haiti but could not. The international airport is under attack. The gangs have been targeting it. They forced Prime Minister Henry to divert his flight. He tried to land in the neighboring Dominican Republic, but he was denied permission. So today he turned up in Puerto Rico and landed finally. It's utter chaos. Amid all this, an ultimatum has been issued. It comes from the spokesperson for the gangs.
If Ariel Henry doesn't step down, the country will suffer a genocide. If Ariel Henry doesn't step down, if the international community continues to support Ariel Henry, they will lead us directly into a civil war that will end in genocide.
That's Jimmy Cheridzia, better known as Barbecue. He was an elite police officer. Now he's the spokesperson for Haiti's gangs. They've joined hands, the gangs. They call themselves the Regroupement Vivre Ensemble. They're orchestrating this rampage. They've taken control of Haiti's capital. 80% of it is under their control. And now they're threatening to launch a civil war and genocide. The gangs say they have a just cause. The ouster of the unelected Prime Minister, Ariel Henry. Now, Henri is both Prime Minister and acting President. He took charge in 2021 after Haiti's last president was assassinated. In fact, let me rephrase that. Henri was put in charge by an international coalition. So he's not a democratically elected leader, yet he's been clinging to power. He keeps delaying elections and extending his unelected mandate. He was supposed to step down last month, but he's extended his rule till 2025. This has bred resentment, and Barbecue and the gangs are using that to justify their actions. But before you paint them as some Robin Hood figures, listen to this.
The armed gangs forced us to leave our homes. They destroyed our houses and we are on the streets.
I'm a motor taxi driver. I was resting. There was a burst of bullets and I was hit on the foot.
At this very moment, heavily armed bandits are storming my shop. Oh Lord, please don't let them set fire to it.
15,000 people have been displaced in the violence. That's according to the United Nations. Many of these people were already living in shelters. Now they're homeless again. Meanwhile, Barbecue is not showing much remorse.
The international community, especially the United States, Canada, France and the core group will be responsible for all the people who die in Haiti.
He's happy to shift the blame to other nations while he makes videos with a gun in hand.
There's not a single gun or bullet that's manufactured in Haiti. Almost all of it comes from the United States, a lot of it directly from the port of Miami.
So the US is partly to blame for Haiti's troubles. What are they doing to make amends? They're doing what America does best, throw money at the problem. They've pledged $200 million to set up a multinational task force, but that force has not been formed yet. Meanwhile, Haiti is crumbling as we speak, and it isn't getting nearly enough help. Look at the UN's fund for Haiti. It's received only 2.5% of the required donations. Neighboring nations are also turning their backs on Haiti. Let me show you a map of the country. Haiti is on the island of Hispaniola. It shares the island with the Dominican Republic. And this neighbor is being of no help. They wash their hands of the matter, even refuse to let the Haitian Prime Minister land in their country. Dominican Republic is fortifying its border with Haiti. They do not want refugees.
We will never accept refugee camps in our country. That is out of question.
Haiti was once called the jewel of the Antilles. But now that jewel has lost its luster. The world has lost interest and it has been abandoned. Our next story comes from India. It's a big day for the state of West Bengal. Its capital, Kolkata, has received a gift today, a new metro line that's being hailed as an architectural feat. The line features a tunnel which is under a river. So the metro goes through an underwater tunnel. Now, this is a first for India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the metro line today. Our next report has more.
Some would call it an engineering marvel, but for these people, this metro line is set to become a lifeline. There are a lot of firsts associated with this project. The obvious one is the 4.8-kilometer underground stretch, which runs below the surface of the Hooghly River. The metro can cross this river tunnel in just 46 seconds. Its construction happened in record time too. The river tunnel was built in just 66 days. The route also features India's deepest metro station. That's another major breakthrough. After inaugurating the line today, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also experienced it. He took an underwater ride in the company of school students. The metro line was a necessity. It took over a decade to accomplish. The project was first conceived in 2008. Building an entire tunnel deep within the Hooghly River was the most significant hurdle. There was no other way. An elevated metro line running over the Hooghly was never an option. The area around the river is too congested. Diving into the river to build the tunnel came with its own set of challenges. The river's soil is saturated with water, so it is very soft. The architects of the project had to dig deep. They went 8 to 9 meters below the riverbed to build the river tunnel. The metro line was necessary. It links the twin cities of West Bengal, Kolkata and Howrah. Kolkata is the capital of the state, while Howrah is its main industrial hub. Thousands of people commute between these cities daily, and the existing means, like the trains, the ferries and the land routes through bridges, were getting congested. The metro will make lives easier for many travellers. It was an idea which was discussed for years, but the plan never materialized. The first proposal came up over a century ago, in 1921. It was from Sir Harley Dalrymple, a British engineer born in West Bengal in 1861. In the 1920s, the Brits wanted to build a tube rail network in Kolkata. By then, the city had ceased to be the capital of the British Raj, but it remained an important trade hub. So Sir Harley came up with a plan. He wanted to build an underground railway line, featuring 10 stops and a tunnel below the Hooghly. But there were doubts about the idea. Many felt the plan was too ambitious. Ultimately, it was shot down. Sir Harley couldn't get the money he needed for the project. But his work stood the test of time. Experts say this underwater tunnel mirrors the one proposed by Sir Harley, but it took some Indian ingenuity to turn it into a reality.
Speaking of things going under, Turkey's economy is moving in the same direction. That's what years of Erdoğanomics can do. Tank your economy. The latest inflation numbers are out. Turkish consumer prices are up 67%. That's a shade over what experts predicted, 67%. Let's look at the sector-wise split. Education reported a 91% hike. If you were spending $10 in education last year, it has now doubled. You'll have to spend almost $20. Health expenses are up 81%. Transportation is up 78% and hospitality almost 95%. So every single thing is more expensive. And why is that? A major reason is the Turkish currency, the lira. It has lost 40% value in 1 year and 82% of its value in the last 5 years. So the lira is nosediving. And what is President Erdogan doing about it? Well, normally, inflation has a routine treatment. Your central bank increases the interest rate, it reduces money supply and brings down inflation. That's normal economics. But Erdogan had his own theories. He was against increasing interest rates. He thought it was un-Islamic. But after the presidential elections last year, he relented. From May 2023, Turkey's central bank announced 8 rate hikes. And wait for this, a total of 3,650 basis points, which is around 36%. Imagine that, a 36% increase in interest rates. But last month, the central bank made a U-turn. It said no more interest hikes. You see, Turkey is heading to the polls. Local elections are due on the 31st of March, and Erdogan's party has a point to prove. In 2019, he lost 2 major cities, Istanbul and Ankara. So this time, he wants to win them back. Hence the pause on rate hikes. But these latest inflation numbers will also raise questions. Clearly, it's not the time to pause. If anything, you need more rate hikes. But what about structural issues? Investors look at certain things before putting their money in a country, like how predictable is the policy making? Is the central bank independent? Is the rule of law upheld? Under Erdogan, the answer is no. So investors gradually fled Turkey. Just look at the numbers. Foreign investment in Turkey peaked in 2007. It was almost $22 billion. But last year, it was just $10.6 billion. That's a 51% drop in 17 years. You can't blame global sentiment for this fall. This is clearly Erdogan's fault. He has made Turkey uninvestable. What the country needs is orthodox economics, a rational and level-headed policy. But tell that to President Erdogan. He's more interested in big power politics. We saw that last year. Erdogan positioned himself between Russia and the US. He also opposed the expansion of NATO. Both moves had the same objective. He wanted to obtain concessions from the West. But when the time came, what did Erdogan ask for? F-16 fighter jets. It tells you what his priorities are. Last year, Turkey spent $16 billion on defense. Guess how much they will spend this year? $40 billion, a 150% jump in defense spending. What is Turkey doing with this money? Making jets and drones. One of them was showcased last month. A new 5th generation fighter jet. Only 3 countries have such advanced planes, the US, Russia and China. I guess Erdogan wanted to join that list. It's the same tendency that we spoke about. A penchant for big power politics. But the Turkish economy cannot bankroll it right now. And that is Erdogan's biggest fault. He has led Turkey into confusion, financial, political and religious confusion. The central bank does not know whether to increase or decrease interest rates. The people do not know whether they should be liberal or conservative. And the leaders do not know which camp Turkey belongs to, the Western, the anti-Western, or the middle. It's a confusion that is hurting the Turkish people. Now let's turn our attention to Mozambique. It's a country in southeastern Africa, home to about 34 million people, and also home to a terrorist insurgency. Mozambique's northern provinces are under attack from a group called Al-Shabaab. They're not affiliated with the Somalian group with the same name, but they do have ties to the Islamic State. This terror outfit, the Al-Shabaab in Mozambique, has been ramping up its activities. Over the last 2 months, it has displaced 100,000 people. 1 lakh people have been forced to flee their homes, and almost 60% of them are children. The terror group is also targeting these children, reportedly to capture them and turn them into child soldiers. Here's our report.
Mozambique is one of the least developed countries in the world. It was ranked 185 out of 191 countries in 2021. It's not the poorest nation in the world, but it falls behind on other development parameters. And this is despite a decent reserve of natural resources like natural gas. Gas fields have been found in northern Mozambique in the Cabo Delgado province. Energy companies have been trying to extract these resources for years. But there's a major hurdle. A terror group runs rampant in the Cabo Delgado province, a group called Al-Shabaab, the name given to the group by locals who believe they are evil.
The sounds of gunshots woke us up. They began to chase people. We watched as they cut off men's heads with machetes. We ran away with the little we had. Those terrorists are evil.
Look how groups of men arrived with firearms and machetes and came to burn the cars. We were terrified, and on February 20th, we fled here. We've been here for a week and we have not eaten anything. All of us who have come here are suffering.
Those people were from Chiure, a district of Cabo Delgado that was once considered safe. That's no longer the case. Al-Shabaab have been ramping up their attacks everywhere in the province, and they've caused over 100,000 people to flee over the last few months. Almost 113,000 people fled their homes between the 22nd of December and the 3rd of March. Most of them left their homes last month after attacks in Chiure. Some travelled by buses or boats. Many fled on foot. They made their way to a small town called Namapa, and now they have to wait in long queues to get basic rations from the Mozambique government. The refugees say the conditions are dismal.
I'm from Chur. I fled on 20th February. We do not have anything to eat nor a place to sleep. We're suffering.
Over 100,000 have been rendered homeless. Most of them are children. About 61,500 have been left homeless because of the rise in terror attacks. And they are the lucky ones. New reports say dozens of children are missing. The fear is that they've been captured by the terrorists. Al-Shabaab has been known to use child soldiers, some as young as 12. Little girls are sometimes married off to their abductors. Despite this, Mozambique's government seems to be downplaying the threat. They refuse to declare an emergency. Perhaps this is to prevent energy companies from getting spooked. The firms had paused their projects back in 2021, the last time these attacks had escalated. Mozambique didn't want the investments frozen again, which is why the government is scrambling to find a long-term solution. At present, there's an international force to combat the insurgency. A force made up of troops from Rwanda and the Southern African Development Community. That's a regional grouping of nations. But that mission is due to end soon, which is why Mozambique is looking for other defense partners. And with that in mind, it has now enlisted the support of Algeria. Algeria has pledged to aid Mozambique. The details haven't been made public, but will it be enough to counter the Al-Shabaab? If it isn't, then Mozambique's people will continue to suffer while the terrorists run riot.
Our last story tonight is about a vast icy landscape, the Arctic, the northernmost region of the Earth. It is a floating pan of ice where polar bears feast, reindeers and foxes roam, and waters teem with seals. Beneath the surface, more animals depend on the Arctic underside. Now, this is a delicate ecosystem and it needs the ice. But for decades now, the Arctic has been in a death spiral. The world is warming up, so is the Arctic, and the situation is much worse there. The Arctic is warming faster than almost anywhere else on the planet, at 2 or 3 times the global rate. Its ice has been melting rapidly since 1978. Now time is running out. The white Arctic is turning blue faster than expected. Now a new study is out. It says the Arctic will be completely ice-free in just about a decade. By 2035, the summer sea ice on the Arctic Ocean could disappear entirely, in which case the Arctic would be mostly water. Now, this is alarming on many levels. You see, the Arctic is a multi-dimensional space. Its surface, the area beneath it, the air above, the water around it, all of this serves a purpose. All of it depends on ice. So when the ice melts, all of it is affected. Animals will lose their homes, their habitats will melt away, and you know what comes next. We start losing the animals in large numbers. The harm extends to humans as well. Sea ice reduces the effect of ocean waves on coasts. Without the ice, waves will be stronger and bigger. They will cause more erosion. People living on the coast will suffer the most, but so will others the world over. When permafrost thaws, it releases 2 potent greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane. This further heats up the planet at a faster pace. This will cause more extreme weather events, especially in North America, Europe and Asia. Remember the searing heat wave last year that left America and Europe sizzling? Or the catastrophic floods in Pakistan from the year before. Such events will increase in likelihood, and they will be much harsher. Plus, melting permafrost could unlock the next pandemic. Viruses and bacteria could reawaken, infect local wildlife and prompt a disease spillover. If you think this is too far-fetched, think again, because this has happened before. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, yet some are finding opportunities in this crisis. Because the Arctic region has abundant mineral deposits. It has oil and gas reserves. Melting ice means they're more accessible by ship, and countries want to take advantage of it. And speaking of taking advantage, of course, China is leading the pack. It is heavily investing in the Northern Sea route. It will go over the top of Russia and give China clear access to the Arctic. It will also boost maritime trade. Shipping time between China and Europe will go down by 15 days. Canadian and Scandinavian countries are interested as well. They're hoping for more shipping routes to open up. Meanwhile, the US is keen too. The region is contentious for America. Greenland has a wealth of gold, zinc, iron and uranium. In 2019, Donald Trump wanted to buy it from Denmark. And last year, the Biden administration approved a huge oil drilling project in Alaska, despite widespread opposition. So the Arctic is clearly enjoying political relevance, but not in the way one would hope. 90% of its melting is because of human-caused heating, because of fossil fuel emissions from oil, gas and coal. Yet countries are busy finding a silver lining here. Instead of scrambling to save the ice, that's what they're doing. Sure, some progress has been made. Like last year, the COP28 climate summit was held in Dubai, and for the first time ever, nearly 200 nations and regions approved a global pact. They agreed to transition away from fossil fuels, to quit adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere by mid-century. One can only hope that they stick to their promises, or the Arctic as we know it will soon be frozen only in memory. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Southeast Asian leaders pat and feed koalas at the ASEAN summit in London. More than 100 artworks made out of over 1 million Lego bricks were displayed in a new exhibition. And in Pompeii, archaeologists discover a well-preserved fresco depicting scenes from Greek mythology. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1964, American boxer Cassius Clay took the name Muhammad Ali. As a civil rights advocate, he rejected his birth name as a slave name. Ali is often regarded as the greatest boxer of all time. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
What platform do you turn to when you have questions? What do you do when you want answers that are quick and reliable? These days, the answers are all there on the internet. And for most people, Google is the trusted platform. But what happens when your go-to platform betrays that trust? Et tu, Google? The tech giant's series of mishaps have become a recent talking point, and Google CEO Sundar Pichai is facing the heat. When OpenAI launched ChatGPT, it took the tech world by storm. The big giants like Microsoft and Google were caught napping. But now, Microsoft has made its move. They have a partnership with OpenAI, and they have hired the mastermind behind it, Sam Altman. Then it was Google's turn. They launched a chatbot called Bard in December, which was renamed Gemini.
7 years into our journey as an AI-first company, we are at an exciting inflection point. We have an opportunity to make AI even more helpful for people, for businesses, for communities, for everyone. We have been applying AI to make our products radically more helpful for a while. Making AI helpful for everyone is the most profound way we will advance our mission.
However, Gemini ran into trouble within just 2 months of its launch. That's because the AI chatbot was filled with discrepancies. Gemini became the laughingstock when its AI image generator gave a series of goof-ups. Google faced criticism for Gemini's historical inaccuracies and for being, quote-unquote, woke. Google had to completely pull the plug on Gemini in India after it made controversial remarks on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Sundar Pichai had to take responsibility for the shortcomings. He apologized for the failures of Gemini, calling them completely unacceptable. Google CEO Sundar Pichai's reputation has taken a massive hit. First, it was the mass layoffs. Google eliminated over 12,000 jobs.
Current economic reality did not force Google to lay off 12,000 of our coworkers.
All Sundar Pichai had to say was, we have to make tough choices. After the recent mishaps with Google's Gemini AI image generator, there are reports of mistrust for the Google boss, and that there has been growing chatter about Sundar Pichai having to step down. This has also affected Google's parent company Alphabet, which saw its stocks tumble. As per reports, certain stakeholders are questioning whether Pichai is the right leader for Google. They are concerned about Google missing out in the race for artificial intelligence. For Google, its search engine is its bread and butter. The search technology generates the maximum revenue for the tech giant. And with Gemini failing to give accurate results, a slowdown in traffic to Google's search engine will be a catastrophe. Will Sundar Pichai survive this Gemini storm?
From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America. Hello and welcome to First Post America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Hamas says it is pressing forward with efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza despite the absence of Israeli negotiators. Talks continue for the fourth day in Cairo. Britain's top intelligence agency lowers the threat level of domestic terrorism in Northern Ireland from substantial to severe, meaning the threat of an attack is likely compared to it being highly likely. Beijing says the U.S. is using the Philippines as a pawn in the South China Sea as hostilities between the two Asian nations escalate over the disputed region. And the UN Security Council holds an emergency meeting to discuss Haiti's spiraling crisis where gangs are threatening a civil war and genocide unless the prime minister steps down. And Venezuela will hold its presidential elections on July 28th. President Nicolas Maduro seeks a third term as uncertainty looms over who will be the opposition candidate. We begin with the latest here in the United States. Super Tuesday had become a much anticipated moment this campaign season, and it certainly did not disappoint. After a string of early primary losses and questions compounding about when or if she would exit the race, we are now learning that for UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, she plans to suspend her presidential campaign as early as today.
Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for president. When I began, I said the campaign was grounded in my love for our country. Just last week, my mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president. Only in America. I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in.
Now her exit comes after perennial frontrunner, former President Donald Trump won convincingly up and down the spectrum last night. His only defeat came in ultra-liberal Vermont, where Haley managed to post just her second win this primary season. Nevertheless, despite that one blemish, the night was undoubtedly and convincingly for Donald Trump. But now begins the arduous task of trying to win over Nikki Haley voters, which could prove challenging. In fact, polls say 81% of those who backed Haley said that they will not vote for Donald Trump in the general election. Now, this is an uphill climb indeed for the ex-president, but not only will Donald Trump have to woo Haley voters, but more importantly, he also will have to woo those deep-pocketed donors as well. Haley, in fact, was able to outraise Donald Trump in January, and even after lopsided defeats, the former South Carolina governor was able to reach financial parity with the Trump campaign. And now the cash-strapped GOP nominee will have to find a way to coalesce donors and voters as he prepares for a grueling rematch with incumbent President Joe Biden. And now, speaking of Joe Biden, Super Tuesday revealed both pluses and minuses for the president. Much like his Republican challenger, his wins were equally convincing throughout the night, except for a surprising and unexpected defeat in the U.S. territory of American Samoa. For the second election cycle in a row, the small territory spoke with a large voice. The island of about 45,000 picked little-known Jason Palmer over the Democratic standard-bearer. Palmer, 52, is a resident of Baltimore, Maryland, and he describes himself as an entrepreneur, impact investor, and philanthropist. Now, despite that lone upset, President Biden held serve throughout the night. Yet, if there was another protagonist seeking to upset the race, it was the quote-unquote uncommitted voter. Now, we remember uncommitted spoke with a booming voice in Michigan, and that voice carried through on Super Tuesday, particularly in Minnesota, where it garnered 20% of the vote. But in the end, Biden and Trump both held serve, their respective strengths and weaknesses on display. And the looming question for the campaigns going forward, can they fortify those weaknesses before November? And now on to Europe, where the war in Ukraine continues. In fact, Ukraine carried out a successful attack using sea drones on Moscow's patrol boat. The Russian warship sustained heavy damages and eventually sunk in the Black Sea yesterday. Now, Kiev says that at least 7 Russian troops were in fact killed in this attack. Moscow, in fact, has acknowledged the attack, but has not provided information on the number of casualties. Just last month, Ukraine used sea drones to sink another Russian warship. That incident involved a Russian amphibious landing ship, which was also destroyed in the Black Sea. Now, sea drones are not a new concept in warfare. In fact, they've been deployed to great effect since World War II. However, this is the first time that the drones are being used at a large scale to target high-value targets. They have, in fact, become indispensable in leveling the playing field as Ukraine continues to find itself both outmanned and outgunned. Ukraine domestically produces these sea drones, which are uncrewed remote-controlled boats loaded with explosives and can travel hundreds of kilometers. The sleek vessels are quick on the water and have a low radar signature, making them very difficult to detect. And the sea drones cost over $250,000, have left no doubt their lethality is without question on the open sea. The Magura V5 is one of the success stories for Ukraine as it continues to fight the Russian invasion. Here's what the Ukrainian minister in charge of the Sea Drone project had to say about it.
A sufficient number of drones are being produced now. This year it will be thousands of drones. I cannot say how many exactly because this is already quite sensitive information. But I will say this, there is no limit.
Тобто достатня кількість дронів зараз виробляється в цьому році.
The niche of long-range kamikaze drones is growing, with the range of 300, 500, 700 and 1,000 kilometers. 2 years ago, this niche did not exist at all.
Тим більше ринок готовий виробляти.
After the counteroffensive came to a stalemate against Russian forces, Ukraine ran short on weapons and ammunition. Though it looks like increasing domestic weapons manufacturing capabilities has provided the boost that Kiev needed.
Last year, our defense industry produced 3 times more than in 2022. Our capabilities for 2023 are 6 times larger than in the previous year. As of today, we have almost half of these capabilities contracted for 2024. We work together with the Ministry of Defense and the Defense Forces to secure further contracts. These are about 100 state companies and close to 400 private companies. This includes 300,000 employees.
Ukraine's attacks on Russian warships in the Black Sea has Moscow deeply worried about the Crimean Peninsula. In fact, after yesterday's attack on the Russian patrol boat, the Kerch Bridge, which links Crimea to Russia, was closed down in fear of a larger attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin has lost 2 ships from his Black Sea fleet within a span of just 30 days. For now, the scores are in favor of President Volodymyr Zelensky, with Ukraine dominating at least this battle. Now, keeping up their promise of a no-limit friendship, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are taking Russia-China ties above and beyond, literally. The two allies are now aiming for the moon. Putin wants to set up a nuclear power plant with China on the lunar surface. Moscow says one day it could help build lunar settlements. When and how? Our next report explains.
When it comes to ties with his dear friend Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin is reaching for the moon. Well, quite literally. The Russian president wants a nuclear power plant with China, but on the moon's surface. Moscow says this could one day allow lunar settlements to be built. It has set a target for 2035. Russia and China signed an agreement on a lunar program in March 2021. The two partners presented a roadmap for the construction of an international lunar research station. Moscow has been contributing with its expertise on nuclear space energy. The head of Russia's space agency Roscosmos says that solar panels would not be able to provide electricity to power future lunar settlements, while nuclear power could. This is because with lunar nights lasting for 14 Earth days, relying solely on solar power carries risks for both manned and unmanned missions. Yuri Borislov also said the project would likely need to be done without the presence of humans. Space cooperation between Russia and China also includes the development of lunar landers for research, a jumping robot, and smart mini rovers designed to study the moon's surface. Under the project, China will send 3 missions to the moon's surface, the latest coming up in May, which will be the Chang 6 mission. Russia also plans to build a nuclear-powered cargo spaceship or a space tugboat, which can transport cargo from one orbit to another, collect space debris, along with other applications. Moscow says it has solved all technical questions connecting the project, except finding a solution on how to cool the nuclear reactor. The concept of using nuclear reactors to power future lunar colonies has also been floated by NASA. Just months after the Apollo 11 mission put humans on the moon in 1969, Apollo 12 astronauts used a nuclear generator to provide electricity for scientific experiments on the lunar surface. Today, the issue of energy supply in space is growing even more essential. NASA is also pursuing plans to return humans to the moon with its Artemis mission. The first landing is scheduled for 2026. Last month, several US media reports said Russia plans to use nuclear weapons in space, which would target satellites. Russian President Vladimir Putin had hit back and condemned the claims. He called it a ploy to draw Russia into arms negotiations on the West's terms. The Roscosmos head says Russia is against deploying nuclear weapons in space, adding that Moscow believes space should be free of nuclear weapons. But Russia's ambitious plan of a nuclear power plant on the moon comes at a time when its space agency has suffered a series of setbacks. Russia's first moon mission in 47 years failed last year. Its Luna 25 spacecraft spun out of control and crashed. But with Russia and China planning to reach the moon together, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are certainly holding up their promise of a no-limits friendship.
Now, the crisis in the Caribbean nation of Haiti continues to escalate. Armed gangs led by former police officer Jimmy Cherizier attempted to hijack Haiti's only international airport. The army was deployed to secure the airstrip as flight operations were halted due to the security situation. Meanwhile, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who was returning from Kenya, was unable to land in his own country. He was denied entry by Haiti's neighbor, the Dominican Republic, and had to land in Puerto Rico. Henry was in Africa to sign a security agreement with Kenyan President William Ruto. Under the new deal, Kenya will deploy 1,000 police officials in Haiti to tackle the growing menace of armed gangs. However, Haiti descended into chaos during Henry's trip as gang leader Cherizier launched an all-out coup against the prime minister. And now the mafia boss is threatening to wage a civil war if Prime Minister Henry returns to Haiti.
If Ariel Henry doesn't step down, the country will suffer a genocide. If Ariel Henry doesn't step down, if the international community continues to support Ariel Henry, they will lead us directly into a civil war that will end in genocide. We will fight Ariel until the last drop of blood. We will fight Ariel Henry until he resigns. I am ready to make an alliance with the devil, ready to sleep in the same bed as the devil.
Now, Haiti has already been under a state of emergency after the first gang attacks began earlier this week. The gangs attacked Haiti's largest prison and freed almost 4,000 inmates, sending Haiti into a state of shock. Hundreds of thousands of residents of the capital city of Port-au-Prince were forced to flee once the fighting began.
The armed gangs forced us to leave our homes. They destroyed our houses, and we're on the streets. Since the day I left my house, I've lived like an animal, because in the space we sleep, even animals don't sleep there. When we sleep, we are crammed together.
I come from Aubain Street in Lalu. Because of the situation since Thursday, water is scarce. Water is life. As there is no water, we are forced to come here to buy a little water.
Now, there is a humanitarian crisis in Haiti, and the international community has been slow to react. In fact, the Dominican Republic has already shut its borders to Haiti. No surprise there.
We will never accept refugee camps in our country. That is out of question. And I don't think the United Nations will ask for that. I don't think they will.
Meanwhile, the United States says that it is monitoring the situation in Haiti and working towards the return of Prime Minister Henry.
So, first of all, we are closely monitoring the situation and condemn efforts by gangs to further destabilize and take control of Haiti. It's our understanding that the Prime Minister is returning to the country. We think it's important that he do so and that he be allowed to do so.
Now, Haiti remains a tinderbox as other gangs pledge to join Jimmy Cherizier in his coup against the country's prime minister. And as millions suffer from the violence, it's unclear if the international community will step in to help Haiti find a way out of this spiraling crisis. Watch this space for more updates. And finally, from Caribbean to Latin America, Peru has been gripped by a political crisis. Its Prime Minister, Alberto Alvarado, has resigned after a scandalous recording of him surfaced. Have the tapes exposed influence peddling under Alvarado, or is he a victim of political conspiracy as he claims? Our next report gets into the details.
The South American country of Peru has been hit by a major political crisis. The Prime Minister of Peru, Alberto Otarola, has stepped down. His resignation comes after a scandal that involves a controversial audio recording. The recording accuses him of being a corrupt political leader.
In the conversation with Mrs. President Dina Boluarte, I announced my decision to present my resignation as President of the Council of Ministers. This is with two objectives. The first one is to give peace of mind to President Boluarte, so that she can reshuffle her cabinet as she deems convenient and can work as she has been doing.
Here's what exactly happened that landed Peru in its latest turmoil. An audio recording of Otarola with his alleged lover was played by a local television network. The recording implicates him in improper dealings regarding government contracts. He's been accused of using his power to influence decisions on such contracts. The woman in the audio later obtained a government job. The scandal unfolded when Otarola was on a diplomatic mission to Canada. He was representing Peru at a mining convention. But as soon as this news broke, he sidelined his trip and returned to his country. His abrupt return underscores the gravity of the situation. However, Otarola vehemently denies any wrongdoings. He claims that he knew about the recording. According to his statement, the recording dates back to 2021, and he was not even a government official back then. Otarola calls the recording an orchestration by his political adversaries. He believes that the recording was edited as part of a conspiracy. Despite all of this, he decided to step down. But all this doesn't end with his resignation. A domino effect has been triggered. His resignation will be followed by a mandate that will change the political scenario of the country. The rule states that the entire cabinet that comprises of 18 cabinet members must resign too. Now all eyes are on President Dina Boluarte. She faces a critical decision which will decide the political fate of the country. Boluarte will either reinstate current ministers or usher in a new wave of leadership. Amid this chaos, the foreign minister, Javier González Oloecha, hinted at the forthcoming changes.
Va a haber un relanzamiento.
There will be a relaunch of the government's general policies, which will include some reforms so that trust in the coming cabinet is not just a formality, but a second opportunity and a win for 2024.
La presentación.
Just a month ago, President Boluarte had reshuffled almost the entire cabinet. Key ministers in important sectors like economy and mining were replaced. They had been tasked to put the country back on the path of economic recovery. The Latin American country is already battling recession, and the latest scandal has further jolted Peru's already turbulent political and economic sphere.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Thanks so much again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. China is preparing for war. Says who? Beijing itself. Their president keeps telling his army to get ready, and now their premier is talking about taking Taiwan by force. That too in the country's parliament. Their economy is in bad shape. Entire industries need rescue packages, but the only thing they're boosting is their defense spending. What do we make of these moves and statements? We'll discuss that tonight. Meanwhile, the Maldives has signed a defense deal with China. What does that mean for India? And is it linked to India's new military base in Lakshadweep? Why does Iran want a naval base in the Sudan, and why have they turned down that request? Why are Indian app makers complaining to the government about Google? What's the human hair smuggling racket busted in India? How is it linked to China? France is the first country to make abortion a constitutional right. What's the politics behind this move? Why is Cuba, the land of Fidel Castro and cigars, making news for powdered milk? Why is Zimbabwe selling the latest US sanctions as a foreign policy win? What's the $12 billion scam that has taken Vietnam by storm, and how fast fashion is getting faster, and which governments are trying to apply brakes? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Hamas says Gaza ceasefire talks extended for another day. Israel has stayed away from the negotiations being held in Cairo, Egypt. There has been no breakthrough in the talks, which began 2 days ago. Reports say mediators are now waiting for Israel's response to Hamas's proposal. The chief of the United Nations atomic watchdog to head to Russia, Rafael Grossi, will hold talks with President Putin about the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, the largest in Europe. In 2022, Russia captured it from Ukraine. Both Moscow and Kiev have accused each other of compromising the plant's safety. In India, the BJP launches a scathing attack on the DMK after its leader A. Raja says India is not a country but a subcontinent. Also claims the people of Tamil Nadu won't accept slogans praising Lord Ram. The DMK's India bloc allies, including the Congress party, distance themselves from these controversial remarks. Iran executed at least 834 people last year, the highest since 2015 compared to 2022. The number in 2023 was higher by 43%. It's only the second time in 2 decades that more than 800 executions took place in a year. Human rights groups have accused Iran of using the death penalty to spread fear. 2 planes collide mid-air over the Nairobi National Park in Kenya. A student pilot and trainer have been killed after their aircraft crashed into a passenger plane, but over 40 others managed to escape unhurt. The cause of the collision is not yet clear. And Montenegro holds the extradition of crypto fugitive Do Kwon to the US. Last year, the Terraform founder was arrested in Montenegro after being on the run for months. Both South Korea and the US are seeking Kwon's extradition. In 2022, his company collapsed, wiping out around $40 billion of investors' money. Is China preparing for war? Will it invade Taiwan and take over the island by force? We've asked this question many times on the show, but today Beijing has given its clearest signal. It is spoiling for a fight. Today, China declared that it wants reunification with Taiwan, and it wants to, quote unquote, be firm in doing so. Now, this is a major shift because in the past, China has phrased this differently. It used to say it wants a peaceful reunification with Taiwan. The word peaceful has now been replaced with firm by this man, Li Qiang. He's China's premier. Less than a year into office, he delivered an address to China's rubber stamp parliament today, presented his annual report and peppered it with some tough talk on Taiwan. Listen to this.
We must persist in implementing the party's overall strategy for resolving the Taiwan issue in the new era, adhere to the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, resolutely oppose Taiwan separatism and foreign interference.
This is not just a hollow threat. It comes with a bigger military budget. This year, Beijing will boost its defense spending. By how much? A little over 7%. So what is the budget for 2024? $231 billion. The budget for the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, this year, $231 billion. It is the biggest increase in 5 years. And these are the numbers which China chooses to reveal. Ask any expert and they'll tell you that the actual figure is higher. China often ends up overspending on its military. There are parts of the military budget which are kept secret, like the spending on research and development. They do not declare it to the world. Last week, the US flagged concerns. It's been worried about China's growing military capabilities. America believes the threat from China is growing. It is entering new battlegrounds, including space. Japan, too, is concerned.
China continues to increase its defense spending at a high level and is rapidly expanding its military capabilities across a wide range of areas without sufficient transparency.
So the PLA gets more money this year. More money means more weapons, more gear. A bigger PLA also means more expansionism. And that's the goal of Xi Jinping. He keeps asking his troops to prepare for war, and now he wants to arm them for that war. Taipei is watching this with concern and stepping up its defenses. Today, their defense minister spoke about this. He said Taiwan would have more missile drills this year. And they're not the only ones bracing for Chinese misadventures. The Philippines, too, is on guard and at the receiving end of China's bullying. There was another incident today. Chinese and Philippine coast guards clashed. Chinese ships engaged in dangerous maneuvers. They bumped into ships from Manila. There were 2 collisions in all. Both sides deployed water cannons. There were injuries on the Philippine side. So China seems to be intent on keeping its many territorial disputes alive. Which brings us back to the Premier's speech. It's an annual event. Usually the world tunes into it for insights into the Chinese economy and their plans for the years ahead. And this time, the economy is a sore point for them. Here's what Li said about it.
The main expected development goals for this year are a GDP growth of around 5%, more than 12 million new urban jobs, a registered urban unemployment rate of around 5.5%, a rise of around 3% in consumer price index, synchronous growth of household income and economic growth, and basic balance of international payments.
Now, those are some ambitious targets. Beijing is promising growth. The Premier says he wants to boost the economy, but he doesn't say how. How will he do it? China's economy faces a host of problems. Growth has tanked. There is rampant unemployment. Among the youth, it's so bad that China has stopped publishing unemployment data. There is a crisis in the property sector. Since 2021, 40% of home sellers in China